computer. Okay, so we're now recording. So thank you, Sierra, for reminding me to hit record. Everyone that's going to watch this after is going to be thankful for that. I'm Karsten. So a lot of people have come to this session from probably many different things, whether it's you're doing single track six, BC bike race, maybe it's you've done Cape Epic, maybe it's some of Sierra's clients and stuff. You know, we're going to I think everyone's going to get a lot out of this because nutrition, I think, is probably one of the most overlooked items in terms of bettering your performance. And I have a saying in terms of my coaching company where I like people to avoid becoming a plastic plant and then expecting that if they water it, it's going to grow. And that, again, kind of feeds into this whole all-encompassing idea of, we need to be doing the fitness, we need to be getting the recovery, and we need to be getting the fuel. And they all kind of jump around in order of priority based on what's happening in your life. But generally, number one priority is always fuel because, well, you think of animals, like that's their number one priority is to eat. So again, I run Mad Endurance Coaching. I've had a long career of racing off-road triathlon. I was 7 years on national team and won a bunch of stuff. So eventually figured it out with some help from good coaches and whatnot. And in the interim, kind of started running a coaching company, jumped over the other side, just heading into Tokyo Olympics, where I joined Trican as being the assistant coach of that Olympic program. And kind of, all through, the last 10 years, I've had my Mad Endurance coaching company kind of in the background. And Sierra is with us today. And Sierra is a amazing nutritionist that has worked with a bunch of my athletes on bettering their nutrition. Because again, yes, I can give advice, but Sierra has a much deeper understanding for nutrition and again utilizing it in your daily life, because we all live a normal life. It's not only training, and then as well nailing it in the training as well and recovery and stuff. So without further ado, let Sierra kind of start her presentation.
Thanks, Karsten. So again, my name is Sierra, and I'm a registered nutritionist, and I do focus on a couple different areas with nutrition, but sports nutrition, specifically working with different types of individuals, whether you're a recreational athlete or you're a professional athlete, and also gastrointestinal health. And I feel like oftentimes those two are very interconnected. So I created a presentation today alongside me talking that just kind of has bullet points because I'm a visual person. I like to have something that's kind of like in front of me. So I'll kind of be sharing the screen, but kind of go off that first question too, just before I jump in. We will go over things together. And if something doesn't get answered throughout the presentation, at the end, I'll go over the question. So if you have something, like write it in the chat as it kind of comes to mind, and then we'll go over kind of like, question share at the end. Hopefully things kind of get answered as it goes on, but there's always gonna be room for that as well. And let me just get this shared screen. Okay. Is that properly up there, Karsten?
Looks like it to me. Yep.
Okay. So basically today, what I'll be going over is bike nutrition, specifically stage racing, and how to fuel for just those types of trainings and endurance. And so again, like we're all kind of coming here maybe at different places in our life. Maybe we're not actually entering into any race. Maybe we are. Maybe we have in the past, and we know that like we could have felt better. So wherever you're at, like this hopefully will be really relatable and something that you'll be able to put into actionable next steps and stuff. What we'll kind of go over is like the basics. I kind of have like 5 like modules really that we'll go over, is like just like eating for endurance, the type of kind of foods and things like that, what it kind of means to do that versus just like general nutrition and how to eat for every day. Caloric intake and macronutrients, kind of just breaking those down, because again, that goes into a lot of like the recovery what we'll talk about today of like carbs and protein. A lot of people who are training and even just like know the basics of sports nutrition, those often are big questions of how much carbs and what to eat and how much. Race, so kind of prepping for a race, like what to do days, months kind of leading up to that, during a race, and aftercare for a race, fluids and supplements and stuff. So that's kind of like just like the base of what we'll be kind of going over. So yeah, so the diet. So I love to start here because I feel like for most individuals, I always like to tell people like you wouldn't just go running a marathon tomorrow without any training. So starting with like a baseline of a proper diet is going to be something that not only like outside of training, outside of longevity and performance and all those things, like it really is just like something to keep in mind of how to kind of live intentionally, even if your race isn't until August. Starting now, it will absolutely help. A lot of people will say like, well, maybe you got good results when you didn't before, but like you could have felt better or you would have recovered better. There's always those things, and it's always good to keep that in mind. But a proper diet, yeah, keeps all the systems kind of working. You can have better performance, increased stamina, endurance, overall longevity. So kind of focusing on like carbs, what we'll kind of go into is like the macronutrient style. Having a colorful plate with all the different macronutrients is kind of your typical point. So like whole grain starches, fruits, beans, things like that, good quality proteins, fat, so monounsaturated fatty acids and omega-3s to be like the preferred type versus saturated. And those are just really like kind of the core notes of what a proper diet looks like. And really like one of the ways to kind of look at like, okay, like having a good diverse diet means that all those little micronutrients are really going to keep score for when you go into training and your body all of a sudden needs it. Maybe it's in a slight deficiency of certain nutrients, but you are able to have this and your body will bounce back faster. So when it comes to endurance, and this kind of applies for a lot of different endurance sports and stuff like that, but there's a lot of nutrients that are important. I would say absolutely every single one. But when it comes to like the focal ones, the carbs, protein, vitamin D, vitamin C, E, magnesium, iron, zinc, a lot of those antioxidant vitamins too, those are going to be absolutely crucial for different reasons. And understanding what you're eating and what has what is the first step. Like awareness is going to be the first step. Education is the first step to knowing like how your body's responding from having these. I'll give an example. If you go out to go even just train, let's say it's even just like a 2 hour and you haven't eaten anything, and maybe the day before you had maybe more of like kind of a beige diet, and you're just not really feeling super, super great. Your body is going to respond in that way, especially if you're not hydrated and things like that. So understanding like what the food groups are that you're putting in the body, going back on the last slide, is really crucial to now this, like understanding what your body might need more of. Carbohydrates is going to be like the main source of fuel. So a preferred source of fuel for cycling. Our body responds really well with carbohydrates when it comes to any type of training and rides. And so something that some of you may know, may not know, but your body stores carbohydrates in the form of glycogen, and that's within our liver, it's within our muscles, but we don't have in like infinite amount, right? So that means that if you're out and the 90 minutes is approximately, because a lot of people I've kind of this question reflected that there's different efforts, right? So like, 30 minutes cycle leisurely down the road to the farm stand is going to be very different than when you're doing a 30-minute uphill climb to get to, your first trail kind of idea. So those types of storage levels and efforts matter into how much glycogen storage you're going to have and how much carbs you're going to need as an individual. So when it comes to like 90 minutes or longer, you're going to need to supplement or have any kind of ingested carbohydrate to replenish what you don't have left in your body and to keep your energy up. So again, everyone kind of comes here from different places and different kind of dietary preferences and stuff. So when it comes to any type of endurance training, it's not a good time to dabble with low carb. And I say that because there's lots of different diets, ketogenic, a carnivore diet, these types of things. It is not the time to do that. And the real reason behind that is because in our body will not respond well. Our body, basically, when it comes to fueling our muscles and being able to have that ATP access, which is really going to be able to give you that oomph and get you to your goal, or get you to the start line, even is going to be carbs. So when it comes to kind of getting enough carbs in, there's a few things that people will do. You aim to take 30 grams to 60 grams of carbohydrate per hour. That sometimes will not be enough. And there's going to be a few factors in that. You're going for a longer period of time. Your energy or your kind of output is going to be much higher than others. And that's when your body might actually need more towards 90 grams. And so how you're going to get that, and the reason being is carbs break down into different kind of structures and compounds. So you got your glucose and you got fructose. Our body needs glucose to have that energy that kind of reserves in our glycogen storage and breaks down in that way. But fructose is actually something that will help add on to glucose. And we have two different receptor sites, which basically means like how much we can absorb. So we can only absorb a max amount of 60 grams of glucose per hour. So if you eat 100, you're only getting 60. And that's kind of, estimated, but it's roughly around that. So it doesn't matter how much you eat or how much you take. Your body's only going to be able to get 60 grams. Now, if your body has now gone through the 90 grams and it needs a 90-gram replenishment, then you're going to have to outsource extra from fructose. And that is why supplementations, when you are training, when you are in a race, especially when we're talking about kind of like those multi-day races, which I'll talk about more when it goes on for a while, is your body's going to be constantly needing replenishment of carbohydrates. And so a lot of like drink mixtures and stuff like that will have a blend for this particular reason of what your body can actually get and maximize that. Fructose also increases the efficiency of carbohydrate absorption. So again, having kind of the blend of the two is really important. Sometimes you'll see too on different types of like supplementations and things, they'll only have like a glucose added, and it might be good to just look at some that have a bigger one if you're doing a type of training where you're going to need that replenishment. So talking about carbs, and this might answer that first question a little bit, but when it comes to like pre and post training carbs, and I'm talking about like, heading into a training. So you're about to head out on a bike. What not to eat is going to be a fibrous, fatty, heavier meal. Also, the amount. So when we think about digestion, and this kind of goes into like what I also do as well, but like digestive health is really important. And when it comes to any type of training and any type of race that you are anticipating and you're kind of training for, digestion can go off quite easily. And I find that a lot of people, things, especially when we get into gels and chews and bars and electrolytes, and all of a sudden our body just becomes very like supplemented, our digestion can go off. So I always like, even going back to that first part of like, making sure we have a good baseline, a healthy gut, that is going to help us when we all of a sudden may be supplementing certain things. But right before you move, and this could even go for more of the recreational biker on the weekend, focusing on foods that are going to be easy for the body to digest, such as carbohydrates in the form of more of those like simple carbohydrates, or a very mild kind of complex, such as like a plain yogurt sweetened with honey. If you need a little bit of sweetness. And again, that's kind of increasing that fructose and that glucose, and it kind of has different things. You add a little bit of berries and stuff like that to it. Oats, white rice, white pasta, white bread. So again, it's like, I don't encourage people to have the bulk of their entire diet made up of white bread, white pasta, and white rice. But this is where your body will be able to utilize those carbohydrates and those sugars and turn it into energy. And that is when it's appropriate to have a little bit more of those foods, knowing that your body's going to utilize it and utilize it properly. Simple sugars are also fantastic, like fruits and stuff like that. I always just recommend go for the slightly lower fiber fruits, because if all of a sudden you're eating like tons and tons of berries before, those are very fibrous. A banana's got some fiber to it as well, but it also has tons of simple energy that is going to basically exchange into that energy for you to go out. The post training is kind of similar. So when we're talking about replenishing with any type of food, if you're making like a drink, like even just like a smoothie, it's not the time to add fats or fibers. It's the time to have maybe like a banana, a protein, and maybe some, milk or a yogurt, right? Something that you can easily get your body replenished with, because when we do exercise and we do move the body, our body's going to need that. The everyday carbs, kind of talking about just like, for the bulk of the other parts of the diet, that's when you can use more of those fibrous complex carbohydrates, especially when we get into talking about how our body can recover faster. So this is when the recovery is so crucial to when we're training, and how nutrition can play a huge factor in that recovery. Let's take just like starches as an example here. Our body with those resistant starches, again, are going to be helping build a better gut microbiome, because those starches are going to feed a better population of bacteria. We're also going to be looking at, like beets as an example. I'll kind of talk about beets further down the line, but those are fantastic for getting something called dietary nitrates into the diet as well. So when we kind of, and that helps blood flow, circulation, and can enhance recovery. So when we have a diet that's like consistently like that, outside of training, outside of focusing on what we're doing, our body is going to respond faster. It's going to respond better. And that means that next time we can jump on the bike after taking, maybe a day off, maybe 2 days off, we're going to have an immediate amount of better energy and response to what we just did. And that's going to help when we get to kind of race day. I need to go put more energy out on the table all at once. During race carbs, so this is really important for people. I see two things. I see people either not having anything at all, which is not great, or I see people having food that is really not going to give them the energy they need. So race carbs are something you want to look at, like low fibrous, low digestive matter, meaning you're not going to want to have a lot of food when you get to like a stop, and you're all of a sudden like replenishing with switching bottles, and you got food stuff there. You want to make the choices that are going to be really easy to break down in the body, meaning you're going to get sugars fast enough to replenish what you've lost.
And just to pop in there to give a little bit of the the racer perspective of that. I'll hear a lot of times athletes sit and say that it's hard to eat well on the bike and stuff, and ultimately it's you can pick a bit of trying to again, what Sierra's saying, just simple things that are really easy to chew that you're not going to choke on and cough down. So generally trying to have it as close to liquid as possible, but this is a trainable skill. And I think that's the big point I wanted to make, is in terms of the coaching perspective of that, you don't just get good at pumping well at 170-ish beats a minute. You don't just get good at taking in calories. You have to train that skill. So sorry to interrupt your flow, Sierra. I just wanted to add that piece.
No, it's a great point too. It really is, how to do what works for you and your style of riding as well, right? Because again, we're all different, and we all may have different goals, and maybe we're doing different types of races, but finding, and this is kind of like, the generalized, or like what's really going to help to get enough energy in, we're going to have to fuel ourselves with something. But again, some people do really well with more following the liquids, and some people are like, they just need a little something to put in their stomach, because all of a sudden they're really floaty. And this looks different. The one thing that's really important, which I don't know if I had another slide, but I'll just repeat it if I do, but talking about sodium levels as well, which is why the electrolyte beverages are really, really crucial to get, because when we're riding and we're losing a certain amount of precipitation, or not precipitation, sweat, we are going to be losing anywhere, depending on what we're giving out, 500 to 750 milligrams of sodium. Now, that is where, when we have just something like plain water, we can be actually doing more harm than good to our riding, because when our electrolytes go off, now our carbohydrate absorption is going to be off, but that is a whole host of other things. I think I have more on that on a different slide here that I'll kind of cover. So I do hope I'll extend more on that. But Really focusing on the race carbs is kind of where you want to do. The energy bars with glucose and fructose, again, when you're riding, you're probably not going to have the whole bar, and I don't recommend people do. I would say cutting it up into quarters would be a great way where you can just get like, even if it's, 15 grams of carbs and a decent amount of energy to kind of keep you going. You kind of put that into 15-minute intervals or however that may look for you. That could be a good thing to kind of try out. Energy chooser gels, looking at different types, what ones kind of work well with your body versus others. Exploring that before race day, before things is going to be good, because if all of a sudden we're trying and we're our own guinea pig, like during something like that, that's when maybe things don't sit well with our bodies when our friend recommended them and we thought it'd be great.
And just to echo that, again, putting it back into the, well, how do we implement this in training? Anytime you're above in zone 3 and above is a great time to start working on your race nutrition, because Sierra's bang on. It's not about, Joe, your friend, said this is going to be, the best nutrition for you or whatever. And then you just abandon what you've done before and you're, in a race, and all of a sudden now you've got an issue because you don't like the product or your stomach doesn't like the product. So again, it's a trainable skill to increase the amount. And it's as well like thinking about where you put it. Because again, that long ride nutrition looks different. Like it's a good start point, but you're going to eat some different things when you're in the lower zone 1, zone 2, whereas zone 3, 4, 5, that's again, back to what Sierra's saying is fast energy. So yeah, sorry.
Yeah. No, that's it. Again, it's finding like what you're doing and understanding that. Maybe that's a question too. Some people just know, even briefly before, there's people that are here training for multi different events throughout this summer or throughout the year, and they're consistently doing that. Maybe some people, maybe you're just playing around with the idea of joining. So those are the things of like, where are you at and what kind of training are you doing, and kind of trying things based on your own evaluation, or having a professional evaluate exactly like what it is you're doing, and then being able to apply something like this to it.
And again, just quick thing, just for anyone, as questions keep coming up, just keep putting them in the chat, and then we will get to them, and maybe your question might get answered in terms of like through the Sierra slides. But keep putting, I see some questions that have gone in, which are great questions, so we'll make sure we get to them and stuff. But yeah, sorry, keep going.
Yeah. I just messed the screen up. Okay, so so that's kind of carbs in like a very small amount of information, but carbs are basically incredibly crucial to focus on. Now, protein is not going to be our main source of energy fuel. So it's like having a big, even just like having a bunch of chicken before we head out on a bike is not going to help our performance. It's just not what our body needs. What we need is protein replenishment afterwards. So protein, if you're not quite aware with it, obviously it's one of the big macronutrients that helps strengthen and repair damaged tissue. So that is from training. So overtraining, undertraining, just training, being out on the bike in general. We are technically going to be breaking little fibers and building them and training different muscles. And we need protein to help replenish that. That also is for like connective tissue and everything. It allows metabolic reactions to take place. So specifically talking about like our electrolyte minerals and everything like that, how our body will respond. Protein is required to generate that. Helps coordinate and regulate essential bodily functions. So kind of similar, it's kind of all part of like how our body moves and responds and is maintained. Per person. So again, this is like very generalized, and this is slightly on the higher end, but I like to start here for a few reasons. Protein requirements are based on many different things. There's the age, there's the gender, there is what you do with your life, where you're at. Women are different than men. There's many things that kind of change. Also, when you're training, that is going to change how much protein your body's going to need. So just as like a general, this is on the lower end. This is someone who is literally like maintaining basically with a semi consistent training, but it's on the lower end, this would be how many grams of protein your body would really need to get to be able to recover from any kind of mild to moderate training. Now, what I see often is that people are not getting enough protein. And there's a few reasons, and maybe it's honestly a personal preference thing. A lot of people don't like want to sit down at every meal and have a bunch of meat, nor would I recommend that to people. So this is where when we're kind of pairing things and dancing with, you know, the idea of training for a race or an event, that's the when the word supplementation is really sometimes it's required, because supplementation basically means like we may need to supplement with something to hit those numbers to make sure our body recovers enough. So kind of speaking on like what you might need is like a protein replenishment for a recovery drink, right? Kind of getting that in. And like what you mentioned initially, Kirsten, is like in the first 10 minutes to 30 minutes max. Because after that, our bioavailability of actually absorbing the protein is much less. So when you go out, whether it be just like a light cycle or even something that's more moderate, again, the protein amount is going to change based on the effort and the individual. But getting into a habit and a ritual of like having a recovery drink when you are consistently training for something is crucial. This is also similar to like when you're finished, let's say you do like an 8-hour ride, and next thing you know, like it's afterwards and before people hit the beer gardens and stuff like that, get the protein in. Because what I often also see is that there's not tons of protein resources. There's a lot of carbs, which are super important, but making sure that you are prepared to have your own protein replenishment is going to be huge, because there's lots of different kind of like trucks that are going to be around and things. And if all of a sudden you skip over this, your body will not have a chance to repair what has been damaged from that style of training and riding. So I hope that makes sense as far as the protein goes there. No, we'll kind of go over that a bit more, but you know, calories, this is kind of an interesting question, because again, everybody is different, right? Everyone's at different weights, different places in their life. Stress factors in also how many calories our body's going to burn. But as a general, like it is okay, to kind of understand what you need for your type of training, it is based on your intensity, your duration of training, and the baseline that you're kind of in. So like an effort, a length of your ride, a baseline. Finding this out again is like really crucial in my eyes when it comes to understanding, having the awareness piece of like what your body needs to recover in that particular stage of your life. You know, whether you're going through perimenopause, maybe, you know, you're just all of a sudden just decided to jump into this and you have no idea what your baseline is. That's when working with, a professional could really, really help, whether it be a coach, nutritionist, but whatever it is. The efforts is like, again, like, are you in zone 2? Are you in zone 3? Are you in zone 4 or 5? If you have no idea, that is a great place to start too. That's kind of the base of like the calories, right? Of what your body's going to need to replenish with.
And
Are
again,
you
just to
leisure?
jump in on the
Yeah.
coach part, Sierra, this is what she does, is determining for athletes and just general people as well. It's not only athletes, but this is what she specializes in, is figuring this out. And then it's again us collaborating when it's in terms of here's the training plan and kind of getting to see both sides of it. So sorry, continue.
Yeah. Yeah. No, and it is really, you know, to me, it's again, it's like it changes at different places, right? So maybe you took off a year of what you used to be every single summer, you'd sign up for an event or a race, and all of a sudden now you haven't, like your body will be different, right? You've gone through different things and maybe you have to get back to a different baseline. So again, when it comes to like efforts, you know, 65%, 100%, where are your efforts? That's also really important to understand. And I think we can all tell like when we've given a max effort versus when we've kind of just like done a little bit. And then our hunger usually indicates what our body needs after. But there's many individuals, and maybe this is something that some of you may experience, is that maybe your hunger isn't actually cueing, but you're really needing food, right? And what I see is a lot of underfueling, which if we think of underfueling, I always think underperformance, right? Underperformance, that's how we're going to perform, is not going to be at our best. And maybe we will kill it, but we may not feel like we did. And that's kind of the biggest difference of like, we don't want to crash as like bogged down energy, especially amongst any kind of like training for something like this. And we also want to get accustomed to it. So our body, when it comes time to race, we feel like we can. So good baseline, again, like starting place of caloric intake is important to know. Glycogen storage levels is a good baseline to know going into any sort of race as well. Like how much carbs have you actually eaten leading up the week to? And hydration. Instead of treating any kind of dehydration, I always say to stay hydrated. It's a good place to be. So practice, again, kind of just like going over this again, like don't start practicing nutrition on race day. That kind of speaks for like trying things that friends have recommended, but also just eating well, right? Eating well to fuel, to have better recovery, to have better results. That is something that like starts as of today kind of situation in my eyes. And then what you're able to do with that is you're able to find what works for you. Because again, every single person's different and people are going to respond differently to different foods. But there is a general that most people are going to feel good with. And that's obviously just worth exploring. Long training rides to experiment with different nutrition strategies. So just like, again, like using those longer efforts, those longer rides to really experiment with, hey, like, you know, how many bottles do you have to go through and how many scoops of something do you need in it to actually get the amount of carbohydrates you're going to need for your ride? You know, and how do you feel? How do you feel when you have half of that? How do you feel when you have maybe a little bit more, maybe you have a little bit of chew. Those are great ways to kind of experiment with what's going to happen when it comes time to actual like race day, because going into it prepared is going to be way better than scrambling day of, because there's so many other things you're thinking of. And the practice, like, yeah, again, like consuming those carbohydrates and electrolytes at different intervals to see what works best. You know, maybe it's every 15 minutes. You just like have a sip of your drink, you know, and you make sure you go through your bottle within an hour. That could be something to kind of practice with. And again, you're not going to be great at it at first, like what Karsten was saying, but it will help if you are consistent with it. And you don't need to be perfect, but you will understand how your body responds, and naturally you'll just start grabbing towards things.
And to add on to that again, to, you know, when we talk about you know, kind of training and racing that we're doing, it's generally, you know, if it's, you know, BC bike race or single track six or whatever, it's you're on single track, and no one's asking you to get your hands off a bar as you're on a descent and start getting nutrition in. That's where it's different from road cycling, where if you're descending a huge mountain, you might start to use that time to, you know, really make sure you're getting caught up on your nutrition, where it's reverse in mountain biking. It's like when you're climbing and actually putting out a lot of high effort, that's the time when it's safe to grab, drink, and all that kind of stuff. So, and again, there's always going to be other factors so again, you might have a longer stretch where you didn't get hydration in, and now you get this double track section. It's like a time for you to start pounding your bottle. And that's again where playing around with it and in training and rehearsing is going to be vital and stuff. So yeah, continue.
Yeah. Well, and I just know from my experience as well, is like when I have all of a sudden I'm so dehydrated and I crush a bottle, I don't feel well, because all of that liquid in your body is not going to help you. And that's, again, it's very different, right? Especially when we've been cycling for, you know, 5 consecutive hours and we're giving, you know, towards max efforts at some points. And all of a sudden you're going to realize, hey, you need a little something, but you don't need all of that liquid. And the same with the digestive matter, right? But you're going to need something, or else, yeah, your body just won't feel good. So the days leading up. So I usually like to say anywhere from, you know, 3 days before, but really the week before can be super beneficial leading up to a race. To make sure that you start focusing more on glycogen storage levels. So that's going to be reserving those carbohydrates in the muscles. It's going to be really, really fantastic to just help build, again, more talking about a baseline of carbohydrates for your body to get accustomed to it as well. And also be able to fuel for giving it your all. This is super important, because if all of a sudden we just start replenishing with like the proper carbohydrate and protein blend the day of, our body will be able to use it, but we need those storage levels. And the science behind it has just had better results when it comes to 3 days before. So again, when we're looking at leading up to any kind of event, specifically when we're doing a multi-day, we need to make sure that we're looking at something like, yeah, 3 days before. An example, and this is like a very, very simple example, but like a pasta dinner, big pasta dinner with some lean protein with some zucchini and arugula. Now, the reason why I add zucchini and arugula specifically is not necessarily that exact one that you need, but don't skip over the vegetables when we're talking about carbs and proteins. What we will miss out on is a lot of, again, those micronutrients that we need to help our cellular function, our repair, our immunity, which again, when we're giving an effort like this in a race, our immunity is vulnerable at the end of it, right? We're doing lots of things to our body, and same with our digestion. The one thing though that I focus on is having a bit of a low fibrous diet. And this is really just to kind of, you don't want to skip over fiber, but for the 3 days leading up, you want to really just focus on something that is easy to digest. So you're not going to have a huge raw cauliflower salad with beans. You're going to have something that's going to be very simple for the body to break down, so your body doesn't get too angry with you before, and then you can actually just utilize those macronutrients more efficiently. The race morning, again, I get this question a lot, is like, okay, so what do you eat and when do you eat it? This is going to be a little bit different starting times. Different climates is also going to change what you're going to want to be eating, what you're going to want to prepare for. If you're starting, let's say at 9 a.m., then you need to be kind of wrapping up your meal latest by 6 a.m. if you're going to have something that is bigger, meaning like if you're going to have a bowl of oatmeal, again, what works for every individual is slightly different, but what I have found works the best is having some oats with a little bit of protein, a small amount of fat. So like a bowl of oatmeal with berries, Greek yogurt, and honey, something that is going to have some glucose, some fructose. You're going to give your body a little bit of replenishment. You can add in an egg if you want, but truthfully, some people do better with less leading into a race morning, and some people do better with having some food in their stomach. This is, again, playing around with what is going to work for you. When it comes to a multi-day event, this is where it changes. You need to, like, doing a 1 day event and then all of a sudden at the end of the day you're done, you're cheersing the beer gun, you go home and all of that was fantastic, is very different than next, waking up the next morning and doing it all over again. So you got to kind of plan for what type of race you're going into and kind of accustom it from that. I would say when you're going into something that is more multi-day, you have to have more of a balanced routine, because your body cannot survive on gels and chews for 7 days in a row and you will not feel your best.
I want
You will
to just
need
echo that as well in terms of jumping over from being a single day racer to doing stage racing. That was me being incredibly naive. And that was, I went and did my 1 day for 7 days. Actually, I did 2 stage races back to back. So it was like, I don't know, 10 or 11 days of racing. But it was just awful. I felt like a shell of a human by the time I was done, because I wasn't doing this. I was just so focused on, I need XYZ, and it was very simplified. And that was my big learning point to the next time I did stage races. Like, well, I've got to live more balanced and eat more balanced. So,
yeah. And it kind of goes for everything. Is like there's the race morning, but then again, like this is kind of the more speaking to the 1 day. But if you're doing multi-days, like preparation, right? Bring your own food, especially if you're changing different areas. It doesn't need to be a huge cooler. It could be something very simple. Get some of those oatmeal, kind of like even like the instant organic oats. You get a tub of yogurt, you bring a little honey, all you really need is a little bin, just so you have some consistency, right? And it doesn't mean not going out and enjoying things afterwards as far as like at the end of everything, but it's more about keeping things consistent to keep the body stable for recovery purposes. So that's kind of where you're going to want to kind of tap into a bit more, is understanding again what you're doing and what you're kind of preparing for. We briefly talked about this, but yeah, getting enough carbohydrates during the race and needing a constant supply of energy. So again, how long is your efforts today, or how long is your ride today? How long Have you been training? Have you been kind of figuring out exactly what your body needs? A constant supply of energy through what types of fuel. So that's again like being prepared, whether it's going to be gels, chews, supplementation of different beverages. Glucose can only be absorbed again about 60 grams per hour. Fructose helps boost that to 90 grams. So again, that is definitely something I would encourage anyone to do when it comes to a race, is having a form of a blend with things, and several types of sugars, glucose, fructose, maltodextrin, to optimize the rate of carbohydrate oxidation. So again, that's more of just like absorbency. So the types of sugars that our body is going to be able to process fast and be able to return in energy for us to keep going and not bog down or crash is going to be those types of sugars. Yeah, those are kind of the during that you're going to focus on and kind of want to look towards. Directly after, carbohydrates to replenish the glycogen storage has basically that you've used. Focusing on drinks and foods with a high glycemic index. So that's again just to replenish what's been lost. And then ingesting protein. So this is where protein kind of comes into, is it's after. You can't just survive on carbohydrates again for 12 hours straight either, but your body is going to be favoring that. If you need to have some form of protein, that's where sometimes a bit of the bars can be great, just to kind of get a little bit into your body versus just having just water mixed with some electrolyte sugar blend. But when it comes to ingesting protein, this is where it's crucial. That 30-minute window or less is very essential for recovering the muscles and the body, the tissues and everything like that when it comes to recovery. A good example, again, like directly after, this does not need to be refrigerated. So when you're at the race, you can have it in a little sachet package. You can have it in a little Tupperware or whatever. You can mix it with water, get in that protein. There's also different types of proteins that have carbs added to them, but you can also do your own kind of blend with a protein, or an energy bar. I don't like love energy bars, but this is more just like, if you need to have like a little bit of something that's not just liquid, an energy bar to a 3-to-1 carb protein ratio with minimal fats or fibers. There's differences between bars if people aren't aware of this. So protein bars are different than energy bars, and that are different than just kind of like an all around macro bar. That's more of like a snack meal replacement. You got your energy bar that's for fuel when you're doing something such as this. And then you got your protein bar, which is directly after you're doing, specifically based for like strength training kind of style. So you're going to want to have different stuff for different purposes. Fluids. So yeah, we kind of quickly talked about this. Replacing water is not the focal area when it comes to training and racing. It is focusing on replacing the electrolytes and the carbohydrates that are lost in sweat. Main reason, what I was also saying, is like you cannot have 17 bottles of water, even though you may feel super thirsty, but you will not feel good. And you're going to we lose a lot of minerals through our sweat. So that's where electrolytes are super crucial. And then carbohydrates are also lost through sweat. The presence of carbohydrates. So again, why we need to consecutively have some form of carbs in our body is that it does promote that water absorption. And that water absorption means that when we have half a bottle of water, but we have it with minerals, our body is going to absorb it and use it and go towards a cell repair way faster and be able to utilize that than if we were just to drink plain water. The concentration of carbohydrates in a sports drink should be between 4 to 6%. So this is like, again, this is kind of taking it on your own. Like, what do you use? What do you like? What may be better for you? This is for basically replenishment of the carbs in that sport drink. Sodium levels lost, again, range around that 500 to 700, 750 per hour. This is a good time to also look at what type of electrolytes are out there, because they're all different. And I go over that a little bit briefly here in the next couple slides, but they are all different. They all have different sodium levels. They all have different minerals. What you are doing when you're training and you're going for a race and multi-day race is going to be something on that athletic professional line versus something that is most typically sold in just like yeah, just kind of a health store even on the shelves as you're in the checkout. Now, not all the time, but most of the time, it needs to be more geared towards this type of training because it is on the higher level. If you're dehydrated, that is when your muscles will work slowly or not as sharply, and it will potentially lead to that dehydration and slow gastric emptying, which can cause that digestive distress that some individuals experience on a bike. This is here just for a disclaimer of consulting with anyone before any supplements get added, because yes, everyone is different and on different medications and stuff. So I know we're 10 minutes out here, so I'm going to kind of breeze through this a little bit, but supplementations, again, supplement in the word of it means supplementing what we may not already be getting or what our body could optimize with when we're doing something like this. There's a difference between a baseline general nutrition and when you're training nutrition. This is where supplementation could be beneficial. So again, protein powders, available sources of protein directly after exercise. What I was talking about, the recovery drink to preserve your muscle and replenish quick enough for a fast recovery. Electrolytes, that kind of talking about like, you know, during a ride, we want to make sure that we're staying on top of mineralization. So that is suitable for our training efforts and types of rides. So an example, very popular one is Noon tablets. Fantastic. Great. For daily consumption, leisure activities, you know, go for a small walk through the woods kind of style. They have their sports line. It's still, I believe, only 300 milligrams. So that means you'd need to be having like 4 tablets, like in like 2 hours or something or more, if my math's off here. That's when you want to go towards the other end, like Morton, there's LMNT, there's Rhino Power, different types of trainings for like powders for training that's specifically geared towards this type of race and training. That is when the difference becomes like it's going to give you more glucose, it's going to give you more fructose, it's going to give you more electrolytes and more sodiums. Again, playing around with it. I'm someone personally, I have low blood pressure. I need more salt. Like that is just my body actively needs more salt. I also eat quite healthy and I get a lot of potassium in my diet, which means I need to offset that. I'm telling you this because everyone is different and some people take in different foods. And I'm someone where my body absolutely needs salt, especially when I'm doing any form of training. BCAAs, significant role in a muscle protein synthesis and energy production. So it is very important to kind of look at like, does this suit you? Do you have any other supplements that already have BCAAs added to them? But it is important and can be very beneficial for athletes who are recovering at any long distances. Fish oil. So fish oil, again, individual based, but it does help the oxygen move around the body more efficiently. So again, when we think about oxygen moving, we're going to think about nutritional distribution. We're going to think about glucose, getting to the muscles. All of that can be really essential. But on another point is inflammation. It has been pretty well studied as far as helping inflammation in the body and cognitive function. So those are two things, again, when we're thinking about training and the efforts, we are going to be causing some form of inflammation in the body because of what we're doing. Supplementation, just another kind of point here is tart cherry juice. That one's a great one. You'll see it added to a lot of sports drinks and stuff. It accelerates the strength recovery after an exercise due to that dietary nitrates we were talking about earlier. And yeah, just things that have been shown is it just decreases blood markers of that inflammation and oxidative stress, again, caused by training. People suggest taking it before you're doing anything and allowing it to basically work and enhance and dilate the blood vessels. So you're able to actually, move the oxygen nutrients around and recover faster. Similarly to beet concentrates, so they're sold in crystals and raw juice can be a good form, but crystals is more concentrated, a little bit more versatile for people. The high nitrate levels that are naturally found in beets, they have this natural assist in helping the body during higher intensity exercises. Turmeric. So turmeric's amazing, anti-inflammatory. Again, the recovery kind of supplementation of how to prepare your body. It is activated by adding black pepper to it. So if you're having it fresh or having it in anything, add black pepper. The piperine that's found in it helps that break down. But a lot of types of supplements will actually add black pepper. They have a type of turmeric that basically has created its absorption. Vitamin C. So vitamin C, we can get it from lots of different kind of foods. Citruses and stuff like that are usually the most abundant as far that doesn't get killed by heat, like some other kind of forms of vitamin C. But supplementation could be a great chance to kind of get that into the diet. And greens, the B vitamins, those are stress and energy vitamins. So also talking about like we're putting a lot of stress on our body by training and we need to do a lot of energy. That basically B vitamins are responsible for our carbohydrate, our fat, our protein synthesis. So it's like if we're deficient in B vitamins, which is actually really common because we don't get a lot of it and they're water soluble, meaning we excrete them through our sweat and other losses through our body. If we're not getting it through food, and it's most concentrated in leafy green vegetables, we could be potentially putting it at risk that we're not metabolizing our food properly. We're not breaking it down to get the nutrients that we need to help our body. So that's sometimes why I recommend powders can be a great way to just like stay consistent with it. It's not void of eating leafy greens though. They come with different reasons of benefits, but a couple things of foods. This is just a quick slide here. Berries. So berries are amazing and kind of favored more as like the athlete's fruit of choice for many reasons. But there's different types of antioxidants found in berries, specifically anthocyanins. So that's going to create that blue kind of purplish reddish hue a lot of the time, specifically in blueberries. It helps with that cellular regeneration, which is going to be that basically that repair of what we've done to our body after training and racing and stuff, muscular tissue repair, anti-inflammatory stuff. And ways to get it in is, yeah, the berries, blackberries, raspberries, strawberries, and goji berries. Goji berries are really rich in vitamin C too. Oats are super favored. Again, they have a slow releasing carb, so they're a great like kind of more like breakfast choice, allowing yourself digestion time, of course, but just it is really sustainable for people and it's a really quick, easy option. It keeps the digestive tract also moving efficiently with the soluble fiber that's found in it. Bananas are really rich in potassium, so they have other minerals as well, but bananas tend to be quite favored by a lot of athletes. They're really easy to break down, simple sugars, and they have potassium in them as well, so it can help with just helping that electrolyte balance in the body if we need it. And coconut water, again, it's got potassium, magnesium, lots of different goodies in there. It's also really hydrating for the body. So when we're talking again about like if we're going to have water or if we're going to have something that has minerals in it and a little bit of sugar, coconut water can be a good beverage to have. Whether it be like afterwards or something like that, when we're just like needing to replenish some things that are lost in a little bit of sugars. Sweet potatoes, complex carbs, fiber for digestion. I don't know if anyone's seen that Netflix series of like the blue zones, but sweet potatoes on there. And I'm like, sweet potatoes are the best, but they have been found, especially when we're thinking about endurance, to fuel for that. And having those different kind of colors, I always like to say paint your plate with color, because the colors are what basically aid in that recovery and that response of performance and endurance and stuff like that. And avocados, so helping the brain cells repair, the antioxidant, kind of going through all of these is going back to that first initial what endurance people are going to need, and vitamin wise, these kind of hit all of those marks. So takeaways, again, focus on carbs before and after racing. It's a primary source of fuel. So that is number one. The protein required for rebuilding, so focus on protein after. That is something that I would always encourage people to do, and opt for an easy, accessible absorption of protein. So don't have a huge steak after. Have something that is going to be easy to break down, easy to get in, and also has minimal fats. Preferably, if you're giving a decent amount of effort after, then I would definitely say to supplement with some form of a protein powder. Fat and fiber incorporated during meals outside of exercise. So again, keeping that balance outside of pre and post training and during and stuff like that, but getting those in, they're essential for recovery and how our body is going to basically function. Hydration, electrolytes for sufficient carbohydrate absorption. So that's really important to stay hydrated, not just during training or racing, but every day. Supplementation required for multi-day races might be more required, just so you can kind of keep on top of how your body's going to feel, especially if we're not having similar foods to what we usually have. We want to keep things going. colorful foods to help inflammation, and yeah, basically consistency matters. All the stuff we went through, but that let me just stop that share. But yeah, that's it in a nutshell. I feel like I could talk for hours about things and go through things more, but it does really. I hope that made sense for a lot of people and was kind of useful. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and so I think if everyone's okay, obviously if people have hard stops, hop off as you need. But I think if you're good, Sierra, we could just answer some of the questions and stuff, and then
Yeah.
as some more come on, because obviously again this is a massive complex topic. But again, Sierra makes a complex topic and helps simplify. And that's where I find nutrition is trying to, okay, how do I simplify it to best implement it? And I think we'll start as well for some of the questions and stuff. Like, just think about too what you want to get out of the race. Like, again, some people might be doing the race because they're trying to win the damn thing. Some people it's just getting to the finish line. And there's a question about alcohol, and Sarah can touch on it probably more, but generally, yeah, alcohol is going to hinder your recovery. It's going to hinder your performance. But ultimately, some people are going to be doing BC bike race with their buddies, and it's a once in a lifetime thing. So if you're going to have alcohol after the race, well, then take care of the other parts of the nutrition end. But again, if you're looking to have a maximal performance, it's like, yeah, stay away from alcohol. And if you think of a non-nutrition thing, like stay out of a hot tub, that's a big one. People love going into hot tubs after bike races. And when you have to race again, that's not going to do you any good. So Sierra, maybe we'll just kind of have maybe some rapid fire, and you don't have to go, too deep in. And we can maybe just kind of get to some of the questions. And again, if you have a question, put it in the chat and we'll try rapid fire it out.
Yeah.
But yeah, so one of the questions was how many calories per hour should we consume on a stage race? Is twice your weight in calories good rule of thumb? So 175, 350 calories per hour.
How many calories per hour should we consume on stage race? Is twice your calories? Yeah, so yes, that's like a general rule of thumb, I guess. Again, it's so different because it's based on the baseline kind of factors. Again, it's based on age, height, efforts, length. Like there's so many things. I know we're talking about like per hour kind of thing, but that really is different. I would say that's a general that you could follow, but if you're really keen on figuring out exactly the number, I'd probably want to get more of a definite answer based on your assessment personally. Again, I don't want to tell someone to have that amount of calories. Next thing you know, you're bogged and you're not getting to where you need to go because yeah, everyone's different.
Yeah, and I think it comes back to that again, that practice and rehearse, and
Yeah.
you'll start to find the like, man, I nailed my session today and I hit my objectives, heart rate values, wattage on the bike that was required. And what did I do? Because that's the big thing is debrief all your training.
Well, and I do actually want to quickly just go on that event. Is twice your weight in calories a good rule of thumb? I personally would say if you're doing an hour of exercise, you're going to be burning way more than 350. But again, it is a little bit different and unique, but I would say that's on the under end for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what are some good I think this would be a good one. What are some good plant-based sources of easily accessible proteins that you'd recommend night before to incorporate before dinner? So, for people that maybe are on the vegan end of things, yeah.
Yeah, that's a great question. Okay, so the first, I would say the easiest to break down as far as like a main vegan source of protein would be a soy product. If you're someone who does not do soy products, I'm talking about like tofu and stuff like that. Tofu doesn't have fibers, it's kind of a lower end of fat. It's typically exchangeable as far as like your lean protein. I always emphasize getting organic for tofu or any kind of soy products, but it typically is quite easy to break down. Now, if you're someone who follows a plant-based diet, chances are your body is accustomed to breaking down a little bit more fiber and carbohydrates than some other people. So having something like a red lentils is going to be easier to break down than chickpeas because of how our body actually breaks it down. If we think about red lentils, they kind of turn into a little bit more of mush than chickpeas do. So essentially that's also how it's going to work in our digestive tract. You could also do plant protein options as far as like a supplement like a hemp powder or a pumpkin seed powder and things like that if you're making your own, or a good quality one that comes already blended.
Another one here we could go with thoughts on creatine for recovery in endurance athletes.
Yeah, the studies haven't been done too well with the creatine and endurance. It definitely has been supported as far as muscle building more in strength training and that type of style. It hasn't shown like drastic differences for endurance specifically. So that one, I would say it's like you could, especially if you're training other parts and different times, but it's not something that has shown a great output.
And I'm going to join two questions together because I think there's some similarity potential. But what are some ways to help with lightheaded slash dizziness on climbs? Would that be more sugar on hydration related? And then is leg cramping during efforts more indicative of hydration slash electrolyte issue or muscle fatigue?
Interesting. That case, so yeah, similar. I would say it is like the sugar and hydration, electrolytes, and all that can basically electrolytes are going to work in the body to hopefully combat that, and that could be a sign that hey, your body doesn't have enough, whether it be sugars like simple accessible glycogen storage level sugars, or it doesn't have enough electrolyte minerals. And the cramping could be an indication of both. Again, I would play around with that, and I would go into a ride and try to be well hydrated before and supplement with electrolytes and see if your muscles recover faster. I know a lot of people that I have worked with before that when they have had an electrolyte blend, especially if you supplement magnesium separately, but the blend of electrolytes have actually helped them because oftentimes we think it's one electrolyte that's out of balance, and that very well could be true, but sometimes when we need more potassium or we need more calcium, or for whatever reasons, that's what's causing these outcomes versus others. So I know that might not be direct, but yes, going to the one about the dizziness, it could be a few things. To me, it could be definitely a sugar hydration related. So I'd try with an electrolyte, kick two of those things just right off the bat and see if you feel better. Or it could be a salt related issue if you're not getting enough salt through your electrolytes or beforehand as well.
Yeah. Just gonna kind of have another scroll through. Are there different forms of magnesium supplements available out there? Which form is best for us endurance athletes, and when should we take it?
Yeah, great question. I would say bisglycinates right off the bat are going to be the most bioavailable, easily tolerated for the gut as far as magnesium sources. This is person to person basis. If you have slow motility, meaning you don't go to the bathroom that well, or your stomach gets all messed up a little bit, citrates or oxides might be a better form because your body will respond better to absorption of that. Bisglycinates are most tolerated by the general. There's also malates and another form. It starts with a T. I totally forget. But the malate has been more studied as far as supporting heart health. So that one could be helpful if that's something that you're kind of looking for. But for more of an endurance athlete, bisglycinates. Glycine, just so people know, is basically a form of the amino acid glycine. So the bisglycinate, it basically stores in our body, and we hold on to that magnesium for longer.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I think thanks for going over time. And again, like this is again a topic that yeah, really is thought provoking and question ensuing. And yeah, again, this is what Sierra does. And so if you are, kind of again wanting to have that, more in-depth approach, this is what she does, and she takes on clients and stuff. And I will be kind of sending out the recording and stuff, and I'll relink Sierra's contact info if you want to consult with her. And again, we'll be doing another lunch and learn June. Whatever that first Wednesday is, and it will be the do's and don'ts of stage racing. So I know I kind of like said the hot tub thing, and we will that will be something I can kind of give my thoughts on in a more in-depth way. But it'll be just, again, all the simple silly mistakes that are easy to make, that we'll avoid. And this is why I wanted to put nutrition first, because there's so many mistakes you can make in nutrition before the race even starts, during the race, that this needed its whole own topic. And so again, that's the importance of nutrition. So a big thanks again, Sierra, and to everyone that came on and stuff. So, and